This is KGW News at 5.
I'm relieved to know that we've been able to handle both in these weeks, and I think we may get to a point where I hope we have enough vaccine that we really start to put our efforts there.
Hello, friends. Welcome to KGW News at 5 o'clock. Multnomah County's health officer is talking there about both virus testing and vaccinations and the balancing act of keeping them both going in the weeks to come. But the doctor's also talking about the success of that so far, and there are some encouraging numbers to back it up. Here's KGW's Tim Gordon.
A worldwide pandemic with a lot of moving parts. So much to do to fight COVID-19. So much information to process. The big news lately has been about vaccinations, but testing people for the virus is still a big priority. And so far, Oregon has been able to maintain a pace above 100,000 tests a week that started in mid-November. You see in January, 129,000, 116,000, 119,000. It's a lot.
Testing has been really hard to maintain with the all-out efforts on vaccine. So the fact that we've been able to maintain testing is really a tribute to our health system partners and people in public health who continue to stand up testing sites, and to the people who go and get tested when they have symptoms so they know if they need to isolate and notify their contacts.
Dr. Jennifer Vines is Multnomah County Health Officer. It's her job to worry about other challenges that come up, including variant virus strains that are more contagious.
My big hope is that these variants will not get a toehold in our region, and that we'll be able to continue our vaccination efforts without having to put resources to responding to a surge.
Because right now, the positive test result numbers are going down. Statewide, going from 8.6% positive in late November to under 5% based on the latest reporting. The first time under 5% since October. Multnomah County has had fewer people testing positive for the coronavirus even longer, with 6% positive January 6th, but dropping below 5% after that.
The overall trend, I think, at this point is clear, and that's really thanks to everybody doing their part around the usual precautions: masking, distancing, limiting social interactions. Oregonians and those of us in the metro area have really hung on with our protective behaviors, and you can see the payoff in the numbers.
Now, Dr. Vines is also the lead health officer for Washington and Clackamas County, so we talked to her about them as well. Now, Clackamas County has just dropped down below the 5% mark for these positive test results as well. And Washington County had done so actually earlier in January, but has since popped back up a little bit. It doesn't take much to move the needle, and that is why it is so important for all of us to continue to be very safe. Tim Gordon, KGW News.
You can say that again. It doesn't take much to move the needle, because 2 positive cases are determining Clatsop County's risk level right now. Officials and business owners argue the county should be in the high risk category instead of extreme. The state says they don't meet the requirements. For the 2-week period between January 10th and 23rd, the county reported 78 cases. The state reviewed that number and says there were actually 80 cases reported. The state uses a number of metrics to determine the risk levels, including how many cases per 100,000 residents. The 2 cases barely put Clatsop County over the threshold, keeping the county from upgrading to high risk. An Astoria bar owner says those 2 cases are keeping his doors closed for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, those 2 cases made all the difference. Yeah, high risk means I can open my door to limited capacity. It means that I can do business. Extreme risk for especially a bar is really difficult because we're not even a restaurant where people regularly come to us for food. They come to us for drink.
Restaurants in high-risk counties can seat 25% of their maximum capacity, or 50 people, whichever is smaller. This week, Dr. Anthony Fauci said states should not be holding back any COVID vaccine doses, even if they do it for that second booster shot. KGW's Pat Doris has been looking into whether Oregon is holding back doses and has run into some conflicting information.
The logistical puzzle of giving out 2 doses of COVID vaccine separated by 3 or 4 weeks to hundreds of thousands of people so far in Oregon is not an easy one to solve. But it seemed Oregon did have a clear plan. As recently as January 22nd, Dave Baden, the chief financial officer of the Oregon Health Authority, brought in to coordinate the state's COVID response, said groups giving out vaccines should hold back half.
Again, as Director Banks said, under our approach, we expect all our vaccinators are reserving second doses for people who've received their prime shot. Keep that in mind when you hear people claim there are thousands of doses sitting on shelves in Oregon. Remember, we can provide more doses. We can provide doses to more people in these populations. We allocated all of our 100,000 total doses each week in that way. But we don't think that's responsible until we get further direction from CDC and the manufacturers to spend doses in that way.
The OHA posted Baden's comments later that day on Twitter to reiterate his point. It seemed like a reasonable explanation. There's just one problem. It's apparently not happening. When we reported 12,000 doses reserved for teachers at the Oregon Convention Center mass vaccination clinic would actually be 6,000 because the other half had to be set aside, we were later told that was not correct. And just this week, a spokesperson for the clinic wrote, rather than holding back doses, we're planning for them based on anticipated allocation and appointment availability. Which is more in line with what Dr. Anthony Fauci said this week. It's the national policy, he said, do not hold back doses.
Means rather than holding back on doses that would be designated for the second dose, given that we now have more and more confidence in the even flow of doses to go to locations, we're going to give a 3-week window so that people will know the doses that they're going to get and when they're going to get them. We don't want to hold back things.
He said a simple system would include using all doses as fast as possible, but making sure that people who need that second dose would get priority over everyone else.
In other words, if you give 50 million doses to individuals and then the next time around you get more doses, when you're at that 3rd or 4th week, the first priority will always be to get the people who've gotten their first doses to get their second doses.
Which brings us back to the question of what Oregon is doing. In the 11 days since the OHA's COVID response coordinator said vaccinators are supposed to hold back half their doses, the OHA has refused to answer pointed questions about that statement, but instead issued a brief reply saying, no doses are being held back. If this is about second doses, we are allocating enough second doses to cover all first doses given out to vaccine providers currently. We've asked the OHA to take us behind the scenes and show us how the vaccines are being divvied up around the state. We think that you should be able to see that and understand how it's happening. So far, no response. We'll keep asking. In Northeast Portland, Pat Doris, KGW News.
Nationally, about 1 in 13 people have been vaccinated so far. This map shows the percentage of people in Western Oregon who've gotten at least one dose. Counties in green have given shots to more than 9% of their populations. In Southwest Washington so far, Pacific, Wahkiakum, and Klickitat counties have the highest percentage of vaccinations, sitting at more than 8% of residents. Oregon's governor repeatedly says she's concerned about the mental health of students and wants them back in class in person. It's why teachers are ahead of seniors for vaccines. Tonight, we hear from students who are back at least part-time. Here's Joe Ranieri.
Not all students are back on campus, obviously. At Central Catholic High School, they're using a hybrid learning system with a group of students going back to campus 2 days in a row, followed by another group on opposite days. Students tell me it's still a little strange to be on campus, but they are excited to have a little bit of some normalcy when it comes to their learning. Central Catholic junior Joey Angelo is back in school.
It's challenging when there's a lack of routine and a lack of schedule.
Instead of sitting all day through a class on Zoom, he's one of the many students at Central Catholic who are now learning in person.
There's nothing quite like in-person instruction. And even though it had to be compromised earlier, just being on campus, there's not an experience quite like it.
This is the second week that the school has been reopened. Delaney Williams is a freshman and is finally getting a chance to walk the halls of her high school for the first time.
It's really nice to see the people that I've been seeing like on Zoom and stuff for this past, what has it been, 5 months? It's really nice to finally see them in person.
Like Delaney, freshman Mallory Robertson is glad to be in the classroom at least part of the time.
It's like another sense of normalcy, but I think it's also way easier to focus. And my mom works from home, my brother is doing school from home. So we're all in one house.
For right now, students go to class in person 2 days in a row every other week, and the rest of the time is online learning. Principal Danielle Ramsey says there's about 170 students on campus a day. She says she can already tell a difference with students.
There's a different level of connection and connectivity that happens between teacher and student when things are face-to-face. Students talk about how 30 seconds to get a question answered versus 5 emails back and forth.
Last spring and the early part of this school year hasn't always been easy.
I tried to make it a point to have my school day structured like it was a normal school day. So I would try and wake up around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, get a good breakfast.
A routine these students hope stays in place. Joe Ranieri, KGW News.